The young guns are taking control across the NHL and your fantasy hockey leagues. But how do you separate the studs from the duds? I'll break it all down on today's episode.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, making it your first listen every single day. I am your host, Steele Rodin, flying solo for a Thursday episode for your fantasy hockey analysis and insight to help you win those fantasy weekly matchups. Thank you so much for making it your first listen. We appreciate all the love and the support, so thank you so much for that. I want to get that off the top of the show. We're breaking down all of the young studs and duds across the National Hockey League right now. Two of the Calder favorite trophy candidates for your season, as well as some other young players across the National Hockey League. That's what we're going to be starting with first. Those two favorites for the Calder trophy right now, Matvei, Michkov, and Macklin, Celebrini. These two guys are absolute studs. And when Macklin, Celebrini went down with the injury early on in the season, I thought the race was over, but he has clawed his way back with some stellar performances, which we'll break down very, very shortly. But Matvei Michkov has been a game changer for the Philadelphia Flyers. Yes, they still struggle defensively, obviously a tough team to support right now, but they're headed in the right direction with some key pieces, Michkov being one of them, and he's been nothing but stellar for the Philadelphia Flyers. 11 goals, 27 points in 29 games. He's a +3. He's got physical aspects to his game, 30 penalty minutes. You got to love that in the categorical leagues. Great on the power play as well. 5 power play goals and 7 power play assists. Almost shooting at a 19% right now with 59 shots on net, 7 blocks, 11 hits. Still has some other aspects of his game that are left to be desired, but offensively, he's an absolute stud. So he fits perfectly into that category alongside Macklin, Celebrini. Like I said, the two favorite for the Calder Trophy at this point in the season. And Macklin, Celebrini has been nothing but sensational for the San Jose Sharks. And lately, he's been putting up some crazy performances and showcasing his skill set in the offensive zone with those no-look passes, the no-look goal he had the other day as well. He's got 7 points in his last 5 games. And as we all know, the San Jose Sharks still continue to struggle, bottom 5 team in the league. But when you have a GM who is trying to change the dynamic and change the culture in San Jose and Mike Grier, and they bring in some key pieces, they bring in Tyler Toffoli, a veteran player who can show some of the younger players like Celebrini and Will Smith, show them the ropes of the National Hockey League. You bring in Jake Wallman, who's been an absolute stud as well on the back end. You've traded your goaltenders, I don't even know at how many times over the last 2 seasons, but you bring in Alexander Gorgiev, you bring in Askarov as well, a goaltender for their future. So they're setting themselves up for success as they go down this rebuild. And Macklin Celebrini is the number one guy that they're going to be looking to for his tenure with the San Jose Sharks. 22 points in 22 games, -4, 75 shots on net, shooting percentage of 14.7 right now, chipping in with the blocks and the hits. Offensively, you love what he's capable of doing, and he's done that so far this season at a point per game plays. Both those players, Michkov and Celebrini, rostered above 60%. Absolute studs for your fantasy hockey team. If you're in a keeper league and you selected them, you're laughing right now. You're loving life because they are going to be a key factor in your fantasy hockey team down the road. Another player along as well, I want to talk about a rookie defenseman who I believe should be considered in the race at this point. But let's get over to Logan Cooley of the Utah Hockey Club, because he's been very good so far offensively as well. I still think, obviously he's a playmaker at heart first. He's going to pass. He's going to facilitate, set up his teammates in Nick Schmaltz, in Clayton Keller, all those guys offensively. 30 games into the season, 7 goals, 26 points total. He's a +12 now. Last year he finished at a -13, so that's a complete 180 of showcasing what he can do on both ends of the ice and what he can do for this Utah Hockey Club as they try to, really get their team and their franchise in the right direction as well. Shooting at 11.9%, 26 hits, 9 blocks on the first power play unit with the Utah Hockey Club, Clayton Keller and all those guys. Really liked the performance. I actually thought this was a player that I was fading a lot heading into the season. I thought, again, because he's a playmaker first, he passes the puck, a little bit hesitant last year. He's got some speed to his game, like we know. But I was fading Logan Cooley, which I regret a lot at this point in the season. He's been fantastic for the Utah Hockey Club. And yeah, I mean, as a center, again, a lot of young pieces with this team. Dylan Gunther in the mix. They bring in Sergachev, some good goaltending right now. They're headed in the right direction. And Logan Cooley has been, again, spectacular so far this season in fantasy hockey leagues. Again, you're not really going to get a lot of blocks and hits. 26 hits actually is really, really good for a player of Logan Cooley's size and stature right now at 20 years old. Loving what he's doing right now. Could get a little bit more ice time, only at 16.5 of average ice time so far this season. But other than that, you got to love what he's doing offensively. So he slides into the stud category as well. This is the player I really want to talk about. Lane Hutson has been, in the headlines. He's been out there in many conversations being compared to other defensemen, other young defensemen out there. Who's he better? Who's he worse than? Right now, he is to me, he needs to be considered as well in that Calder Trophy race with Macklin, Celebrini, and Matvei, Michkov. Again, another player I was hesitant, fading at the beginning of the season. 22 points in 31 games, minus 14. This is still a very bad Montreal Canadiens squad, but he has taken over that first power play unit from Mike Matheson, with the likes of Patrick Laine, who's been popping off offensively, Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, all those studs who make up their top line in Montreal. You got to love the speed. You got to love the edge work. You got to love the tenacity on this kid at such a young age to make the moves, to make the plays that he wants. Yes, there are some boneheaded decisions that he has made both offensively and in his own zone. Again, that comes with the lack of size that this player has right now, 5'9", 158 pounds. But you got to love that. Again, we know players of that size who can dominate and be that number one guy, quarterbacking the power play, doing everything they need to do, breaking out of the offensive zone, transitioning properly, and doing what he can defensively. So those four guys for me, absolute studs right now. Both Lane Hutson and Logan Cooley rostered at 44% and 43%. If you're in a fantasy hockey league and those guys are options on the waiver wire, I would urge that you go and pick those two studs up right now. Again, most likely not, but they're below 50%. And if they are available, I think it could do wonders for your fantasy hockey team. If you're sliding a little bit, if you've got some injuries out there in those positions that you can fill in, those four guys, especially Logan Cooley and Hutson, like I said, below 50% rostered on Yahoo right now, would be fantastic for your hockey club. I've got Lane Hutson in one of them. I've got Celebrini in one, and I've got Michkov. So I'm dabbling with all of these studs out here. We're going to get to some of the duds, though. Some of these young guys who are just not performing, who we were high on heading into the season and have just been a complete letdown 3 months into the National Hockey League 2024-25 season. We're going to get to the duds after the break. Big time bets at the end of the episode. But first, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. And the goal is very simple. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings pour in all season long. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And you can win 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Braden Point, 2+ goals. Josh Morrissey, 4+ shots. Connor Hellebuck, 30+ saves. The possibilities are endless. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. This episode is also brought to you by Select Quote. The World Series, Super Bowl, Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing, teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. Select Quote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience. helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Go to selectquote.com/lockedonnhl today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedonnhl to get started. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. I know Flip's not here right now, but we both appreciate all that love and support you've shown us over the years, especially we're getting to our 3-year anniversary. So thank you so much for all of that and more. We couldn't be doing this without all of our listeners out there. Make sure you continue to drop a comment, your questions, your statements, your opinions on the YouTube channel as well. You can find us on Twitter to leave those comments as well. We're going to get to some of these duds right now. Let's get to these duds right now, starting with Matty Beniers. This is a player that Flip and I were so high on going into his first full rookie season, finished with 57 points in 80 games, 48 blocks, 79 hits, 148 shots, shooting at a 16.2% percentage that season back in 2022. Obviously, I think a lot of us out there were getting tied into with the fantastic season, the Seattle Kraken, obviously a newer team in the National Hockey League, going into the playoffs after a very bad first year in the league, making it pretty deep, beating the Colorado Avalanche, beating all these teams, and then doing a complete 180 in the opposite direction over the last 2 years. And that's exactly what Matty Beniers has done over the last 2 years. Went from 57 points to 37 points and is now currently rocking at 17 points in 33 games, only 15 hits, 30 blocks, 58 shots on net, 6.9 shooting percentage for the young centerman. And this is just, it's not working with the pieces around him. He's playing with Brandon Tanev, Jaden Schwartz, two guys who are, Brandon Tanev not known for his offensive capabilities. Jaden Schwartz, a veteran presence in the league who's been injured countless times over the last couple of years. You bring in some other young guy, you bring in Shane Wright, obviously, you're a top draft pick for them. Jared McCann, goal scorers, is on that left side, second line with Chandler Stevenson and Andre Burakovsky. I just don't think there's enough pieces right now for Matty Beniers to really shine like we know that he can, that he's done previously at different levels of his professional hockey career. Again, struggling as a centerman in the faceoff circle all 4 years of his National Hockey League career, below 48% in the faceoff dot. So struggling right now. He's rostered at 11%. A lot of people aren't out there that own him. If you do own him, you got to drop him at this point. He's definitely a player that is hurting your fantasy hockey team and hurting your chances of winning your fantasy hockey league and, of course, your weekly matchups. So I think Matty Beniers at this point in the season is a very droppable player. Not a lot of teams and owners out there actually have him. If you do, consider dropping him and picking up one of those other guys if they are available, or so even just someone else off the waiver wire. Over to a couple of LA King players right now. I want to start with Quinton Byfield because his development is something to be very concerned about as well. After a career high 55-point season last year in 80 games, 66 hits, 19 blocks, 161 shots, there just seems to be something misfiring in between the ears right now. Again, not getting the best deployment, centering that third line in between Warren Foegele, I believe it is right now, and Tanner Jeannot. They've mixed up the lines a lot over the season. Alex Lafreniere was at that third right wing spot. He's been phenomenal, so he gets moved up to that second line right wing spot for the Los Angeles Kings. He is playing with Tanner. He is scheduled or projected to be playing with Tanner Jeannot and Warren Foegele right now for the LA Kings, and he's just been struggling offensively. Only 4 goals, 13 points in 31 games this year, -2 on the season, 54 shots, 28 hits, and 6 blocks. He's still getting over 17 minutes of average ice time, but there's no oomph to his game. There's no boom. There's no just confidence. Overall confidence with this player is lacking. Owned at 25% on Yahoo. I believe it's a little bit higher on ESPN. At this point, again, he's on the first power play unit too. And he's just not clicking. It's always coming up to Adrian Kempe, Anze Kopitar, Kevin Fiala, those guys. Alex Lafreniere has been up and down on the first power play unit. He's been very good for the LA Kings, which brings me to my second player who's not so much a dud, but he has been a dud over the last 10 games. And that is his teammate, Brandt Clarke, who is quarterbacking that first power play unit as well. 17 points in 31 games, 67 shots, 59 blocks, 13 hits. Up to this point in the season, or at least up to a week ago, he's been a phenomenal defenseman, young defenseman for your fantasy hockey squad. He has only got 1 point in his last 8 games, nothing on the power play, nothing 5-on-5. It's really just been a tough stretch for Brandt Clarke on the blue line. Very young defenseman as well, 21 years old, obviously getting a huge opportunity with Drew Doughty. I think a lot of people need to keep that in the back of their mind, that Drew Doughty will be back soon with the Los Angeles Kings back in the new year, probably early on, mid-January is what they were aiming for after that injury in the preseason. But at 56% rostered, 58% rostered on Yahoo, he's still a rosterable player. Keep him on your team. I think as we get closer to when Drew Doughty returns, we're going to start to see a shift of him potentially dropping back to that second power play unit, Drew Doughty taking and quarterbacking that top power play unit. Again, it all depends on what the chemistry is, what Drew Doughty looks like when he comes back from this injury. But that would be the so-called prediction is what I'm going with right now. Brandt Clarke has been struggling, 58% rostered. I don't think it's not a huge thing right now to drop him, but keep that in the back of your head as you move forward. Last player before we get to big time bets, Juraj Slafkovsky. I mean, to me, he's been an absolute disappointment when it comes to categorical leagues and his over fantasy value. I mean, you got to be liking the hits, 70 hits. He has that physical aspect, but only 36 shots on net in 28 games for the young forward of the Montreal Canadiens. 3 goals, 17 points, a -9. Like I said, 36 shots. He's only shooting at 8.3% right now, 19 blocks, 70 hits. Struggling on the power play. I think with Patrick Laine back in the lineup, of course, for Montreal as well, that's going to hurt his opportunity. But for a player who's been playing on the top line with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield for, I want to say, the majority of the season, it doesn't really make a lot of sense that he only has 3 goals to show for it. He's not shooting the puck a lot compared to what he did last year, 152 shots on net in his second season in Montreal, or I mean, his first full season in Montreal. Nevertheless, very, very disappointment of a season for those 4 players, at least those 3 players. Those are the duds, though. Those are the young studs and the young duds right now at this point in the fantasy hockey season. Again, with Quinton Byfield, Matty Beniers, those guys are both rostered under 30%. I would urge to drop if you have them on your roster at this point. Brandt Clarke and Juraj Slafkovsky, you can hold on to them for a little bit. I don't think you're really ever going to drop Juraj Slafkovsky. You're hoping that he can kind of turn his offensive skill set up a notch and start shooting the puck a lot more offensively and on the power play. Those are the young studs. Those are the young duds. Do what you want with that information. That will help you win your weekly matchup and your fantasy hockey leagues. We're going to get to big time bets after the break. I'm looking at a same game parlay potentially. Lots of games to choose from. We're getting after it. This episode, though, it's also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place those bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Once again, make sure you hit that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review, and make sure you share with your friends and family out there. We really do appreciate it over the holiday season. So thank you so much for staying tuned in Monday through Friday. 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. Over to big time bets, where the money is made. Hopefully we're making you some money out there. We're getting after it right now. First pick of the night. And I'm loving this pick. You could go about it two different ways. If you want to get spicier, you can always do that. Avalanche on the puck line against the San Jose Sharks. This is a must bet for Thursday. The Avalanche have won 10 of the last 10 matches between them and the San Jose Sharks. 8 of the 10 were won by 2 or more goals. 5 of the 10 were won by 3 or more goals. So I'm taking the Avalanche on the puck line. You can go -1.5. You can spice it up, get some better odds at -2.5. I'm going to stick with the -1.5 option right now for the Avalanche on the puck line. Again, the history, it's right there. 10 out of the last 10 have gone the Avalanche's way. And that's what we're going with on Thursday for the first pick and actually the lock of the night. We're backing that up with Jack Hughes, 2+ points. Again, multi-point fanatic right now. He's had 2 multi-point games in his last 3 games. Big matchup. Let me get that up real quick. The New Jersey Devils will be facing the Columbus Blue Jackets in Columbus. So I'm loving the 2+ points with Jack Hughes. That's hit 60-70% so far this season for me. I love going back to this player prop when they're going up against Metropolitan Division teams as well as some lower tier teams in the National Hockey League. So that is the second pick for Thursday. Last pick of the night, Oilers on the money line against the Boston Bruins. Tough loss like we talked about on the most recent episode for the Oilers, at 6-5 loss to the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup final rematch. First one of the season for them. Oilers on the money line against the Boston Bruins, though. I think they're going to bounce back in a big way after again, choke artist job in the third period. Forget that game. Look at what you did the 5-6 games previous to that. You're on a 5-game winning streak. The Bruins are still on this road trip right now where they've struggled at times. A couple of good wins, couple of bad losses here and there. They won that game against the Calgary Flames most recently, but I think it might be a little bit too much for the Bruins going into Edmonton against Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and hopefully Stuart Skinner is showcasing his best skill set in the blue paint. Those are the 3 picks. Avalanche on the puck line. You can go with the -1.5 or -2.5 for the juice, for the spice. Parlay that with the Jack Hughes 2+ points and the Oilers on the money line. Avalanche puck line is the lock of the night. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Make sure you go check out the Locked On NHL podcast for your second listen, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link in the description below so you don't have to go searching for it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We wish you good luck with your bets tonight. We wish you good luck with your weekly matchups, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow. Peace.